What's going on, guys? Pat Damiano here, and today we're going to be going over the kettlebell single arm front rack squat. Now, this is one of those exercises that really allows people to grasp the concept of, oh, this is why we use kettlebells. Just the way they are shaped and the way that they sit on your body, they're going to add certain challenges in certain exercises that other pieces of equipment just can't do. When you're doing this exercise properly and this kettlebell is off to the side and you're deep into the bottom of that squat, your lats, obliques, core, lower back, and shoulders are all going to be fired up in a way that other equipment just can't do it. This kettlebell weight is pulling you off to the side. Your entire body is going to make sure that it doesn't, and you get a ton of cross-body stabilization and just a lot of core activation. Again, like I said, that's going to be really hard to mimic with other exercises or pieces of equipment. So that's why this exercise can be so important, even if you aren't somebody who is using kettlebells religiously or all the time. This is still a great one to throw into the mix on your strength days, your lower body days, full body days, or whatever it is, just so you're kind of getting a little switch up in your workouts to keep things a little fresh and to be just a little bit more functional. So let's get into the exercise. Now, the first thing we need to go over, and the most important part when it comes to doing this exercise, is a proper front rack position. We want to be in a position that is, one, safe, and two, going to make this exercise worthwhile. So a lot of times when I see people do this exercise, they hold the kettlebell up here on their shoulder. And right now it's just kind of sitting on my back of my shoulder in a sense, the same way a barbell would when doing a barbell squat. Now, yes, we have some weight off to the side, but it's kind of defeating the purpose of the lats and obliques getting fired up. So the first thing we need to do is make sure we're not doing that. So get that kettlebell off the shoulder and off the traps. In addition to that, something I see all of the time with a kettlebell in a front rack position, this goes for cleans, snatches, Turkish get-ups, squats, and so on, is just breaking the wrist. See this gap between my wrist and the kettlebell? We want to close that gap off by flexing my wrist. Now, I know this isn't going to be the most comfortable thing in the world, but it's going to be a much safer and efficient position to hold the kettlebell in. So my best advice, is just get used to it. And you will, I promise. Now, if you need to, or in the meantime, you just can get maybe a sweatshirt, long sleeve shirt, you can get a sweatband or a towel and just throw it on there to ease this, to give you just a little bit more padding. No problem there. So now that we have this wrist flex and the kettlebell is off our shoulder, the last thing we need to do is just make sure this elbow is in and down. So now my elbow and forearm are basically against my ribs. So now I have this kettlebell in a nice solid front rack position with my elbow in, wrist bent, and the kettlebell's not sitting on my shoulder. Now we can actually get into the squat. So after we have this kettlebell in a nice solid front rack position, the rest of the exercise is fairly straightforward. You just do exactly what you would do in a normal squat. So feet about hip to shoulder width apart, push my butt back, drop down and push my knees out, and then stand on up. Get as deep as you possibly can in a squat. When you drop to the bottom, or the farther down you get into the bottom, the more this exercise is going to be working the lats, obliques, and core. And at the end of the day, that's a huge reason why we are doing it, is to get a little bit of a different stimulus in our squatting pattern. Now, one more thing I want you to focus on, especially as you start to get a little heavy with this exercise, is your elbow isn't going to be perfectly in the whole time. It might be up and off to a 45-degree angle. That is okay, especially as I start to squat down and this is heavy and I stand up, I'm gonna wanna be pushing my elbow up a little bit into the kettlebell, because that's how I'm really gonna turn on my obliques and lats to make sure that this kettlebell isn't dropping down as I'm into the bottom. That doesn't mean as I stand up, I'm lifting my elbow. I'm kind of pushing my elbow into the kettlebell to keep it right where it needs to be. That's going to be a really good way that when we get heavy, we keep this kettlebell right where it needs to be so it's not dropping forward. Now, in addition to that, if you were ever doing this exercise within a complex like the PD Special or the Zeus, which reminds me, if you need 20 kettlebell complexes to add into your training, go ahead and click the link in my description below and I will send all 20 of my best and favorite kettlebell complexes to you in one document. Now, as I was saying, if you are doing one of those complexes, there's a good chance you're going to be getting a pretty heavy kettlebell going, which is great. That's what we want. And that squat might be the dictating factor. Now, if you really need to, and you really want to push yourself, we can get a little help with our other hand in this squat. Now, when I do this, I'm just helping out a little bit with this hand, and I'm helping by pushing up on the handle just a little bit. Now, I can promise you, when you do that exercise with a little bit of help, we are still getting all of the benefits of it in the lats, obliques, lower back on that one side. So don't worry about that if you need just a little help sometimes. And that right there is how you do a kettlebell single arm front rack squat. Awesome squat variation. Go ahead and add that to your routine. And as always, I appreciate you guys sticking around. Make sure you leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you like this type of content, and I'll see you next time.